we'll go to the Onsite. It looks like we are live for Eurocall, virtually connecting. We're at the end of the event, I believe. I'm Ken Bauer, your virtual buddy, here with my co-buddy Simon Enser. And why don't we introduce the Onsite folks, and then we'll introduce the rest of the offsite folks.
Hi, I'm Shannon Sauro, Shan Sauro on Twitter.
Yeah. And I'm Louise Ohashi Lu on Twitter.
And here is Merasa Alizadeh. I'm Merasa Alizadeh on Twitter too.
And we have one more joining us. She's coming from a session, so Kate Borthwick will be here.
Wonderful. And how about we introduce, we'll start with Lucy, then Parisa, and Simon.
That was yesterday. That was yesterday, yes.
Go ahead, Lucy, you're muted. Okay.
Hi, I'm Lucy Norris, and I'm at Mobile Pedagogy on Twitter. And it's lovely to be here. I've just been working for the whole summer with groups of EU Erasmus Plus funded teachers on technology courses, particularly mobile and digital technologies.
Great.
Go ahead, Teresa. You're muted.
Okay, my turn. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Parisa, which is a Persian name. I'm from Iran. I'm so happy that I have the chance to get connected because my visa was denied 3 times. I think the world knows that. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just thank you.
The world does. Yeah.
And Simon, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Simon Ensor. I'm over in France. I'm an English teacher, and I'm buddying with Ken this morning. So maybe we go straight to the guys over in Southampton.
The guys over in Southampton.
What's up?
That would be.
What's going on over there?
So this is my first time participating in one of these. Is it normal for us to just roll out ideas or ask questions? How do we do this?
Do we have normal here? I'm not sure
we don't have normal. It depends who's joining. There's no normal. Often we're at the end of an event. It's a lot of reflective process on what's been going on at the event and talking about what's been happening for those of us that weren't able to be there.
Good.
So,
well, do you guys have a reflection so far at this end of the event?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that I've really enjoyed a lot of the sessions, and there's been a real breadth and depth of what we've seen here. People considering language learning from the perspective of educators, from the learner's perspective, from the perspective of identity, social justice, quite a lot of different ways to think about how we can integrate CALL into students and teachers' daily practices. And I've been very privileged to attend a lot of sessions that were really informative.
Yes, and for me, it's my second Eurocall. So I was at Eurocall for the first time 2 years ago in Italy with Parisa, actually. And back then, I think we were very new to the world of conference and conference attending. So we did not really see many sessions back then. I remember maybe only a few.
Were you guys sightseeing?
Not really.
I saw lots of sessions.
But I've been really enjoying the sessions at this conference after like maybe 2 years of attending conferences and learning how to handle that. I can say I've got the hang of it. So I've been connecting not only with researchers based in Japan, but also from, well, different parts of Europe and maybe other places in the world. I'm so happy about that.
So Kate is joining us, as you see.
Yeah.
We're taking a photo. Hold on, technical difficulty.
Done.
Thank you. Do you guys mind if I reflect on a few of the new words that I've learned? Because I think that's something I keep a notebook. So I'm like old school. This is because I'm not a digital native, according to some of my younger colleagues. They're like, you still write things down? But
You still use the term digital native?
It wasn't me. It was these young
in a non-ironic way.
We call it analog technology.
They know no better.
You know, the first session I attended was actually Steve Thorne's keynote, and I always write down new words. So like he had a new expression for me, this idea of bodily deixis. And he was speaking of trouble.
Oh my God! What's going on? Oh, hey, I'm leaving. Bye. I'm just so lovely. Thank you all for everything. Hello, folks.
Good to see you again. Oh my God.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for the interaction on Wednesday after my talk. And Shannon's talk, as you know, was brilliant. I'm sure you'll enjoy the conversation.
Absolutely.
She's a dear friend. I want to say goodbye before leaving.
I was crying like a baby.
All right. See you all soon. Bye.
Okay. Stay out of trouble.
Speak of the devil.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bodily deixis.
He was coming to check your pronunciation.
I know. I think I misspelled it, so let's look it up, right? But he was talking about this really great. He showed a really great example of young people discussing something that they had been following around on a gaming type device, and when they were explaining where to go, their bodies were positioned towards where they were going. So this idea of referential meaning being carried out through the bodily position. Yeah. Okay.
How did you spell it?
Bodily.
Bodily.
Are you just Googling bodily? What's coming up here?
Predictive search. Here. DEI.
Thank you.
XIS is how I spelled it.
Google says, did you mean bodily?
Yeah, Google's useless. No. But another thing that I was making note of were a couple of statements that had been made. And I think somebody observed, and I have to make note of it, there have been several talks on telecollaboration that were focusing not on what students said, but how they said it. And we saw, I found a great notation of a reference that I want to use, and I've lost track of it. But I thought that was interesting, where they were looking at kind of how people are being judgmental or non-judgmental. For example, Martin and White's model of appraisal, Martin and White 2005. That was a reference that started coming out, and I'm going to investigate later. I also heard about some really fabulous teaching ideas. So I have to give a shout out to Rose van de Zwaard's presentation. She had a terrific illustrated example of what it means to like be face threatening or dealing with face, when she was talking about one of the challenges her learners and advanced learners face when we maybe oversell their abilities, so they won't negotiate for meaning when they are positioned as an expert, because then it's like, oh, suddenly I don't understand something, but people think I'm really good at language, so I better pretend I understand. So we don't see as much negotiation of meaning. But she had a terrific task that she described that I want to find out more about it. It was, good Lord, it was a digital theater performance task as part of a telecollaboration between students in the Netherlands and students in Australia. And it sounded fascinating. I was also really interested by Marie-José Hamel's discussion of the use of natural language processing for corrective feedback and the introduction of a tool under development called My Annotator. So that's something like I'm going to be paying attention for. There have been a couple of really fantastic studies. A call out to Rowena Kasperwitz, and she was looking at, she's in the Digital Creativity Lab, but it was kind of combining research on second language learning, gamification, and primary school pedagogy for using gaming for like really younger learners, and looking at the kind of learning development that came out of that. And I thought it was a beautifully designed study, and it was a pleasure to hear. So like, I've got these little snippets, and at the end of the conference, I feel sated.
Yeah.
Full up. Yes.
That's a good word.
Kate.
Thanks for sharing.
Hello, can I just move it around a bit? I can see my face like this. It's like I'm sort of
To make sure you're ignoring your way in.
my way into the
You're still hanging on. Your feelings about the conference, because it was your home territory.
That's right.
It was, yeah. And unfortunately, what that means is I don't get to attend many things. I mean, when I first put in the proposal to host the conference and got excited about it, and we've been planning it, I have fun, while you're doing the organisation, but to have fun and attend things and think of ideas, from the presentations that you attend. And then we've all been running around like crazy for 4 days. But I think for me, what's been fantastic is all the different range of ideas, and the area that I'm interested in is open access and obviously MOOCs, and seeing the different perspectives on openness, and seeing how that has moved on, over the years that I've been involved in it, where, in the beginning you have all the altruism. I think Dave Millard referred to this when he was talking about in his Web Science keynote, that notion of the kind of utopia. And as educators, we're out there and you want to reach everyone, you want to help everyone, educate everyone and share everything, and why keep anything behind a wall? But increasingly reality's coming to play, all these people that have been engaging in OER, open educational resources, and now are creating MOOCs.
In Japan,
are perhaps coming up against different tensions, perhaps in their institution, perhaps in what they want to achieve as teachers, perhaps in just, the way that education is perhaps becoming more of a marketplace, and those kind of barriers. And how is that changing, that lovely utopian ideal that I remember from kind of 7 years back, 7 or 8 years back?
Seems so recent, right?
I know, it still seems recent to me. I'm still living it, or trying to live it. But it seems like, it's harder to do that. So that notion of the conference's theme about, a climate of change, and how the world's getting tougher in so many ways, in ways that, Teresa has experienced very directly, in relation to this conference, and the challenges that face us of trying to stay open and sharing and to collaborate with people. And I think so lots of things have come out that have been sort of positive, but also the tensions have also come out as well. And what's so great is that everyone here is working on those tensions and defeating them.
Absolutely.
And, finding ways to engage people in different ways. I really loved Shannon's keynote. Not just because I love Harry Potter, which is obviously big
and not
part
just
of it.
because of the beautiful slides.
Yeah, beautiful slides.
Very engaging.
I know.
Yeah.
And the time turner, which... you didn't show, actually, did you? You showed me afterwards, and we sort of caught it on video. That was something that actually made me excited as a teacher. I mean, back 500 years ago or so, I was an English language teacher.
Before MOOCs.
Before MOOCs, it feels like 500 years ago. I think it was the Stone Age, actually. I was an English language teacher, and loved finding ways to engage my students in class and learning English. And lots of things that Shannon was saying about fan fiction and engaging with groups and people's passions really spoke to my root core inner teacher, and it made me think, I'd love to go back into the classroom and do my English language classes again. And if I was to do that, I'd go back and I'd follow Shannon. I'd read Shannon's work and I'd say, look, this is exciting. Because you know what? That would be great for the students, but mostly I would find it really great because I would have this opportunity to go back and revisit Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. But then really get into it and use it creatively.
Engage in different ways.
That would be so satisfying to do just for me personally. And I'm just wondering how I can with what I currently do, because obviously I don't
picking up with that engagement, the part that I found interesting about Shannon's presentation was the part about bending, like race bending and the gender bending. And so taking a story, because she mentioned that one of the students who'd been asked to read a book that had no female characters in it said, well, I didn't really engage with it. I didn't want to do an assignment that was about this because I couldn't find myself in that. And that prompted change and new assignments where you are looking for the students to take different perspectives in the book and maybe change the race of the characters or change the gender of the characters or change whatever so that it's something they can identify with more. And I thought that was really interesting, not just because it should be an opportunity students have, but it just shows the power of one student's voice reaching out and changing and then echoing across Europe and now across the world. You should tell that student.
She's still in our program. And what's really powerful too, that I thought that she was willing to say that, right? That she wrote that in her assignment. So it wasn't like course feedback. It was actually part of the, she was getting graded on it.
Right.
And I like that we encourage, this is part of the Swedish education system, but that we are encouraging our teachers to really take their students' voice into consideration. So when they're students, we practice that with them. And I think that does get them engaged, because obviously we have things that we're trying to help our learners do, whether it's to learn about some sort of aspect of language or open their mind to a culture and overcome stereotypes. Sometimes the way to get them to do that is to give them a bit of a hook, as opposed to, beating them over the head and saying, you have to think this way. And because one of the problems also with saying you have to think this way is we as teachers can be blinded to our own prejudices and our own stereotypes. And so when you have room for the students are being guided to do at least one of the things that you want them to do, but you give them a choice in the way that they do it, and they bring back something even more original and transformative and deeper than you would have seen from them if they were just doing what you told them to do to obey the rules and get the grade.
And it sounds so simple to offer choice, but it's often overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that creativity thing, isn't it? I think if people have ownership over what they're doing, and they really feel it's true ownership, it's coming from something inside, then they're going to be motivated to do it. And you're going to see the reward as the teacher, aren't you? Because you're going to see something that you're not expecting.
Yes. Awesome. We need to stop talking in our classrooms and listen to our students. It's my constant mantra.
Does it work?
I am surprised every day about what comes out of my students when I actually give them a voice. And as computing science students, people find it strange that I have them doing a lot of writing. But it's wonderful. I forced all of my work's been done through connected courses type setup. So all of my students are blogging all of their solutions and ideas and thoughts about what they're doing in their programming, software engineering, and computer security. So it's wonderful to just let them free and not put them on rails. And so I'm loving what I'm hearing there.
Lucy, Teresa?
Well, Teresa just gave a thumbs up.
I'm tweeting all of this.
You're tweeting.
Oh, wow. It's very difficult to give choice.
Jump in, Teresa and Lucy, because there's not many of us, so it's pretty well open mic.
Okay. Fall off the chair.
Can we signal to say something?
No, go ahead. Just jump in.
I'm just finding it's really interesting. I've been working with groups of EU teachers who are teaching a secondary school environment. And recently I've had groups where, say, for example, 10 Swedish teachers and others from Latvia, Lithuania, wherever. There's a real divide between nations. And the Swedish teachers started a big debate last week in Scotland about how free their curriculum was. And for them, choice and pupil voice was second nature. And for other teachers, they'd never even heard of the idea. They'd never thought of the idea of giving students choice at all, negotiating anything. And it really did make them think. And I just wonder about foreign language teaching, if anyone's done any research on the contents of the curriculum in terms of even one language, let's say English, because that's the one I'm, that's most common at the moment. And just looking at, how are those elements playing in, especially with the digital as well. It's increasing choice, saying to people, you don't have to give your students pen and paper homework. Is what? Can I give them something else? And when you give choice to the teachers to think about giving that to their students, they find that conceptual leap quite hard because it's never occurred to them.
That's a really good question about the policy angle. And I don't know of research that specifically looked at technology, but I know I'm going to give a nod to my husband, who's also a researcher in Sweden, Francis Holt, and he does work on language planning, language policy, and how it's carried out in the classroom. So he's looked at the implementation of the Swedish national curriculum by English teachers. So we do see that role of choice coming to the foreground, but also how it's implemented in various ways. And I see this myself when I go and I observe the practice in schools. So he hasn't looked at the digital practices, but I see them and how it's not just the teachers and the students who negotiate that. There are obviously different school policies. And sometimes they are at odds with the learning goals, and teachers feel very overwhelmed by it. You can see how sometimes choice isn't a choice because it's still, it's you know, like if a school has decided
the options,
the one computer per child situation, but they get a certain amount of money and they decide we're going to do one iPad instead. And so I've seen problems where that has occurred. And like a teacher who's trying to teach writing says, this doesn't work because the students approach an iPad differently than they do a computer. The literature points to that, right? And so their principal will say, well, just do some app games or whatever. And they're like, no, I'm teaching writing. I want them to get used to typing. Typing with a keyboard-based device is something the students understand, but they don't understand typing on an iPad. For them, an iPad signifies play, and they don't want to write. So this is now interfering, but that's at a local level. So I am sure that there's people who've investigated this, and I should know. It's such a good question.
It's your homework.
One area that I think would be really rich to look at is the fact that there are teachers coming and they want courses on technology. They're desperate for it. Many of them may be older. They're frightened about it. But the trouble is, in their countries, they don't have Wi-Fi. There is no money for computers. The kids are not allowed to use mobile devices in their classes. So they're coming to me saying, you know, I need to learn about this digital stuff. I really want to do it. But you're stymied because the kids can't use it apart from maybe at home in homework. So, you know, the whole idea of BYOD and different policies in schools on what you're allowed or not varies so greatly that we might as well be talking about different universes and planets.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we work in the Japanese context, and no Wi-Fi in central Tokyo universities I've worked at. No.
Wow.
No.
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Japan is a thing.
No Wi-Fi at not a medical university either.
Yeah.
But when it comes to education, it can be really low tech, right?
You're guaranteed a blackboard or a whiteboard.
What the hell? Blackboard even.
Blackboards. I have to wipe chalk off myself, you know, after classes. So
Yeah, right before this, I think Teresa was also with us over Skype. We were listening to a talk by Jeremy White, who just left this program. Came taking. It was about bring your own devices for kindergarten children, and it seemed like parents were not really willing to let their children take their iPads or any other devices to kindergarten or to school, whatever, elementary school too. So they have them for gaming only, and it's mostly for entertainment rather than for education.
And also, who's going to pay for the apps and the valuable tools that we design? So 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, I was advocating the use of VoiceThread. Now that's a big thing. So there are so many tools that 5, 6, 7 years ago, they were fine. And now you can do a trial. But basically, no one's solving the problem. If you think this is a tool that's great, we're happy to pay for books sometimes, but who's going to pay for the apps?
Yes.
And we can talk about learning practices, but actually it's not so easy to share. Even something simple like an audio, it depends on the device, it depends on the diversity of devices.
Yeah, and once you get into bring your own device, there are so many different variables.
And I think that's got to be talked about.
Accessibility of apps, even if they're available through that, you know, for Android and for iPhone, for example. It's
independent.
You know, I want to give a brief shout out because we're talking about, we're suddenly talking about mobile devices. And I need to give a shout out to Lucy here, who, you know, that handbook that recently came out that Carol and I, that's hot off the press that Carol and I. Lucy co-authored a chapter.
Awesome. Yay. It was great fun. Well, I'm not
awesome.
When I think about the no Wi-Fi across so many places, I'm not sure about the word revolution in the title of the chapter.
Now I know which book I should order to the library. Yes, Teresa.
Pretty, so you got that?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
I said now I know which book I should order to the library, because we are allowed to have the library buy books for.
Okay, I got it. Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's on my list.
I think we're hoping
By the time you get home, Teresa will have done it.
Teresa's all over everything. I get it done.
Thanks. Definitely. Great idea there. So, yeah.
Yeah. So can I ask
Yeah,
a
I
question? I would like to ask Teresa a question, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
So
Sure.
What's your experience been through Eurocall this year, Skyping in and being linked in? I'd love to hear more about it from your side.
Right.
Thank you. As you know, these visa rejections made me feel really disappointed, honestly. And because recently I have a lot of challenges to deal with, I really don't want to get angry. Yeah. And then these visa rejections happened, and I controlled myself a lot. So physically, because this gives me palpitations. And then mentally, of course, I feel really down, blue. And then having the chance to attend virtually gave me power, the feeling that I exist. I was banned, but then through the online world, which is still kind of borderless, I could connect, and more than ever, I love technology. So, and another feeling is that, when you attend a conference on site, you decide to skip some sessions, right? I couldn't.
Surely not.
I'm unlucky.
No.
And I'm checking like
Twitter's
tomorrow. Yeah, I'm checking Twitter's hashtag like every second, and yeah, it's like I'm there more than other people. This is the feeling that I have, and
the feeling that I have as well. You do seem to have attended a lot, really a lot, and I think it's great, because we went thinking, oh no, Teresa's not coming. That's it, and suddenly you've gone from being sort of conference delegate number one, and you've been able to participate in so much and contribute so massively, I think, to the community discussions on Twitter, through the app in these ways, and you personally have blended the conference. I think.
Well, I'd love to send a summary of all of this back to immigration and say, and you said she didn't belong. What were you thinking?
Yeah.
They were totally wrong. They should know.
Yeah, and I think I had this chance because the Eurocall team really cared and supported me. Shannon supported me, so I no longer feel that I'm unwanted or banned. So yeah, I really feel that I was there, and I learned a lot. And I've started blogging recently, so I'm a blogger now, and I created a weblog post on tech tools from Eurocall. So this made me follow everything, and I asked different people online, can you tell me this kind of app that you introduced in your presentation? So I really communicated online. It's quite possible.
Yeah.
And thank you for the support, really.
List of all the tools and apps to be introduced through the conference, and she asked people to add to that list. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for
Tweet a link.
Thanks. I'm adding more apps.
It's very heavy going on site. I'll leave it at
You had
that.
all the sessions.
I was at the session.
You're also dealing with jet lag.
I've been
And that's
dealing with
something
jet lag.
else. Can I ask you about like the time difference? And you were saying you felt very present, but I was thinking sometimes being present and sitting and attending can be stressful. And the time difference, people are looking at you now that you're attendee number one, and that wasn't the plan when you signed up for the conference that you were going to be so much on. But how have you handled this physically? Like, do you have a sore back? Are you tired? I'm drinking.
Yeah.
Thanks.
8 hours of difference. Yeah, that was hard to handle. So the first virtual session like this one was at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I went to the lab, because I didn't want to disturb my husband. Yeah, I went to the lab, because my husband was asleep. So I went to the lab, stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning, and Japan is safe, so no worries, And then, absolutely, like a little tiring, but I really wanted to be present. So you helped me, and I also tried to be online. That was hard.
So you're like without leaving the country.
Exactly.
Well done.
It's like, because Merosa and we designed an online course, and to me, that was a lot of work compared to our offline classes. So attending a conference online, it's kind of hard, but I enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and I was there. So I crossed the borders, and that's a great feeling.
I'm showing people your blog post.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
And a lot of other notifications.
Yeah, you need to look at Facebook.
Are you game, actually? Because this could be dangerous depending on the kind of messages you get.
Thank you, Merosa.
Great.
I love the design.
Yeah. And the way it colors like the logo as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
And WordPress.com.
Okay. And I think that's the top post, right? You haven't had any posts on top of that,
Yeah, it's
This hangout is making me think of all sorts of things.
Good.
Firstly, there's the 4 or 5 of you, because we can't see Teresa, but I imagine she's somewhere hanging around.
She's behind the computer.
She's tweeting. Okay, so
tweeting
she's tweeting.
Yes, she
okay,
is.
so she's out of view, but she is actually participating in this.
Yes.
Machine, and she has one machine, I assume. And,
She's on her phone.
Yeah.
This is her laptop that we're using, and she's tweeting from.
yeah, and Lucy's comment before about teachers and students who may not have access. Well, for me, this is typical of the sort of things that I'm living every day in my practice, which is many teachers, they're not at all au fait with digital anything. Kids are resistant. They don't want anything to do with it. And on the other hand, you have if you put one device which is connected to Teresa or to Lucy in a space in Southampton or in France, that immediately changes everything. It changes the space. And I have a story of a student who he went to visit Teresa a couple of years ago because we do virtual and physical exchanges. So he was one of the students who actually got away from France to go to the UK to start talking with students in the UK. And I came across him maybe a year ago, and he was in Nicaragua. And I'll tweet his blog in a moment. But what happened to him was he was trying to complete his studies, and he fell seriously ill, and he had a lung disease, and his lungs were collapsing, and he nearly died. And from that, he decided that while he was alive, he was going to make something from his life, and he wanted to travel. And I caught up with him on Facebook, and he was in Nicaragua, and he was blogging. And what he wrote at the top of his blog, I think, says a lot, which is, I can't find it now, which is basically, basically from different. I'm going to find out a blog about it. But from the difficulty, he was put into touch really with what it meant to be alive. And he wanted to share that with everybody with his blog. And I think that you only need one person who is connected. And they don't even have to be connected at that instant to be able to talk to other people about what that means to their lives. And I think for me, that is the crucial issue, is we cannot work with the principle that everybody's going to have a device and everybody's going to be doing the same thing, and everybody's going to be interested in Harry Potter. That's not reality. However, the enthusiasm that can come from one person who is going to Nicaragua, or one person who's communicating about Harry Potter, or one person who has a device, that serves the community. And for me, I think the technology, there's an irony to it, because it's very individually based. But at the same time, I think we have to go beyond that and talk about, what does this mean that Parisa was not in Eurocall? What does that mean for future conferences? And where are the students? Are the students only going to be ever data? Where are their voices?
Very good question.
We can do this, you know. And I think the other thing is that one thing that I'm very aware of is how little I know as regards my students, or as regards other teachers. Why is it they're making those choices? Why is it they can't do these things? So I think that perhaps we need to actually start coming away from the computers, coming away from the sort of tribes where we feel we can identify with other people in academia or wherever it is, and then start speaking with people who are completely unlike us. We're part of them. We're not disconnected from them. We're part of them.
Exactly. And ask them.
Sure. How can we help them, and how can they help us?
Exactly there.
Can I bring that?
It's not going to go away. The devices will not go away. They're here.
Did you hear Teresa?
Teresa's a question.
Can we bring that? Can we connect that conversation to open practice? Did that make sense?
And
the screen's gone black.
When we're thinking about open practice, we're thinking about how we're sharing, and often sharing digitally, and that's wonderful. I can share what I'm doing with Simon, and Simon can with myself, and I've never met Simon in person and look forward to that day. But that open practice doesn't really let us hear those other voices that aren't sharing in the digital space as much. I mean, they're sharing in analog space and in written journals and other publications. But when we talk about open practice, we tend to really focus on the digital sharing and not other sharing. We should be
so
thinking
maybe we
about
need to broaden that out then as a definition. Open practice is about being open, having that mindset.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I think
it's brown bag lunches.
I agree. There's also a danger, isn't there, that you start to think that what's out there and open is the world. And then, you know, I worried about that, you know, with MOOCs, when everyone was getting very excited about MOOCs, and the idea that this MOOC is great and this is the way to do it, and everyone's doing it, and there's thousands of people doing it, and this is great, this is great, this is great. But then what about the people that are not doing it, and those that are lurking and are not sharing? They're still perhaps getting something a lot from it, and maybe something that's extremely important for their life and their learning. So we're not seeing them, but also those people who as you were saying, who don't have access to different devices, or also just don't have the learner autonomy skills, I suppose, to engage with something like that and to get the best out of it. And suddenly you see divides happening, don't you? And you see people perhaps being left behind or being left over there. And that's an aspect of openness that actually worries me. And my response is Teresa's, really. I think we need to do more of it. We just need to be more open.
Or they choose not to do it as well.
Privacy need as well. We need to go back to and bring that into the discussion as well.
I had a conversation with some support at our university system. We have a program to help us go to conferences for faculty that don't have funding. Our university system allows us to apply, go attend a conference, but we have to make a commitment to come back and share about it. And I was having a discussion with them yesterday and about, I'm sharing, I'm publishing on my blog, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And they said, no, we also need you to go to a room where people can physically go that aren't used to consuming content in this space, and actually just talk with them and have a seminar, have a brown bag session, and sit with faculty and talk about what you saw at that event. So thanks, Simon, for reminding me of that. Because I think
just say that's kind of essential, because we often at Southampton University we often talk about we need to share good practice. We need to do precisely what you described. Go to a conference, then come back and feed back. And we've now got to the point where we acknowledge that the blogs and the various sort of online forums, people just ignore them. Even if you do an email summary, if you were to do that, people ignore that. And we actually do need that physical sit down in a room over lunchtime and give the key points and then discuss it. Otherwise, actually, it doesn't happen, even if the person has created the blog and gone through the moves on Twitter or whatever.
Even within the conferences, and that's what I really appreciate about Eurocall, that people have got a set lunchtime to sit down, break times of a decent length, like half an hour, and so much happens in that time. The social bonding, the distance, the social distance decreasing a little. You're starting to feel more comfortable with people. Absolutely, you ask them about what they're presenting. You might have seen the presentation and you wanted to ask something that you didn't want to ask in the 2-3 minutes at the end of their presentation in front of everybody.
But is that time costed? Is that time costed institutionally? Because increasingly the pressure, particularly on teaching contracts, is if you're in lunch, we don't pay for that. We pay for the sessions you're in front of somebody. We pay for the session, the exams you write. We don't pay for lunch breaks.
Wow, that's some hardcore bean counting, isn't it?
But that's a familiar scenario you're describing.
I'm afraid it is. In the UK,
It's not so much in Japan, right?
Maybe not.
Although, I mean, in a
workload models that need to be changed.
It depends. I mean, definitely, if you're working as a part-time teacher, you will have a schedule where, say, you teach one 90-minute class, and that's counted as your workload, and you'll teach that one class, say Monday 9 o'clock. You'll teach that every Monday for the month, but you'll have summer holidays and winter holidays, and you'll be paid throughout the year. And it's coming kind of common for some recruitment agencies to now have that work outsourced and get people on an hourly rate, and then not pay them during the holidays. And so I suppose that's more of the bean counting kind of thing. So it's moving in that direction.
And it happens in the US as well.
Can I just say, coming back to what you were saying, Louise, about the break time and how great it is to connect with people. One of the aspects I love about the Eurocall conference is how friendly and approachable everyone is. And I the first time I attended a Eurocall conference, I was really stunned. It wasn't like a conference. It was so much fun. And,
there was dancing.
Everyone was up for having so much fun. But I mean, it was the discussion and the community. And although it's a large conference, it really does feel like a community where you kind of feel like you know everyone. Even if you haven't necessarily met them. You feel like you could.
And you kind of do by the last day.
You actually do.
Today when I went to breakfast,
you recognize everyone, don't you? And you said hi.
I have to agree with you. So I've only been living in Sweden for 5 years, and my first Eurocall was when it was in Groningen in 2014. And I was really anxious because, you know, even though I'd been very active in Calico in the United States, and I knew researchers who were based in Europe, I knew them on paper and not in person. And one of the things I find is it works for me. I think personality-wise, it works for me to follow up in questions with someone in person as opposed to via email. Email is a very work-oriented approach. It's formal. It also adds another obligation for people to deal with in their inbox. Whereas at a conference, you know, I may have read something, and while we're at a reception, I can talk with people about ideas, and they come up, and it can be maybe more casual, and then you can follow up later. But maybe you get some of the initial work done informally and in person. And I found it really nice that there were people that I knew from the Calico context, and there were new people I was meeting from the Eurocall context, and there was this openness and mingling, and like I felt, I have to say, I've been involved in telecollaborations with Robert O'Dowd thanks to the reception at that conference, because I met him. Steve introduced me to the table of people that turned into the Uni collaboration crowd, and I started sorting people into their Hogwarts houses, because when you and then, you know, it went from there. Then people started to hear more about, okay, here's this weird person, and tell me about your research, and the fan stuff comes out, and then you find, hey, that might fit into a class that we have on innovative approaches to using technology. And the next thing you know, I'm part of this telecollaboration, and I start to get to know more about the telecollaboration network. And that came about through the social aspect, which, and this I'm going to bring back to Teresa, because even though you were present, you couldn't engage in that level of interaction. And that's what I think is incredibly damaging about these kinds of politically motivated bans against our colleagues in research and scholarship. And that's what's limiting innovation and academic freedom. So although I really am thankful that we have these virtual opportunities and they enrich us, they're not a substitute for things that a lot, not everyone, but a lot of people benefit from.
Yeah, you were shortchanged. I mean,
and so were we.
Yeah, we were too. Because you still had the opportunity to participate like this, but those aspects were taken away by the ignorance of the people making these decisions.
Yeah, and thank you so much for taking action. You know, Shannon talking about my story and others. I mean, her story too. You know, you just voice. You know, recently I have started something, and honestly, I'm not really sure. So right now I'm reading, educating on activism in English language education, and also, I don't know, at a very personal level. And I learned from you how to take action. So because recently, you know, I'm getting in touch with a lot of activists. Some of them, they go to extremism, and I don't like it. To me, taking action means sharing stories, and that's it. Then you will find some people who support you, some people who support you, but they don't want to talk about it for their own reasons. And I respect, you know, their silence. But I'm so happy that there are people out there who truly care, like you. So that's why I'm grateful to the Eurocall team, Shannon, you, and Louise, you, Marasa, and a lot of other friends. So it's not easy to take action, because when you start speaking out, when you start opening up, people start judging you. And we want to be perceived in a way that we perceive ourselves and our action. And this doesn't happen. So it's not easy, but sometimes we have to take side.
Can I say,
so thank you so much.
I think it's great that you have taken action, because I mean, you know, the silent story we haven't said is that there are people who haven't been able to attend here because they haven't got visas, and they haven't. We know about them because we know they've registered and we know their story. But nobody else knows.
And you know,
them,
Kate,
people that like
sometimes,
relate,
you know,
like that.
yeah, right now I'm applying for probably a second PhD, and I don't even think about the US.
Right.
So I don't choose it, so I don't get rejected. So this will not happen even. But you know, I'm deprived of thinking of going to the US and studying there. So sometimes this even doesn't happen because we know that we will be banned, so we don't apply. And that's so complicated, you know.
The way is shut.
Yeah.
Shannon, yeah, right.
Oh, you have to squeeze one in.
Yes, I'm sorry for the interruption. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Whatever way you can, we've got your back. Yeah, in whatever way we can.
I need to go and see. I need to go now, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I was going to ask about time there.
Publishing the proceeding.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I think we'll be wrapping up soon.
I will. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time on site.
Bye.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Louise, I love you, but
I am. Yeah, I know.
Sitting in those chairs.
That's good.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Teresa.
here, over here.
All right. Yeah.
You suffered for your virtual connection.
How was your time as well on site, folks? I don't want to make sure we're not pushing it from whatever else you have on site.
Time-wise, what are you guys doing next?
I think, yeah. So I need to head out
Wrap
soon,
up
because
soon, yeah.
I have to coordinate my departure time with a friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other thoughts at Europe at the event as you're kind of all thinking about heading home, and how are you going to continue these conversations and this action going forward?
Well, I'm actually going to a Harry Potter conference in a few days in Dublin. And I know this sounds very funny, but as people were seeing, there's a lot of activism in the Harry Potter community. And I'm involved in a panel on Severus Snape, who is, I think, a good example of a teacher who took a stand. So we might see how in his youth, he made the wrong decision. And then he spent his adult years fighting against the choice he made and trying to train and empower his students. I think he's a terrible classroom teacher, but one-on-one, he provided his students with the spells that they needed to deal with their opponents in life. He also provided, through his unpleasant personality, challenges for them to overcome when dealing with the things that they would face later. But he fought. He continued to be a subversive agent, a subversive teacher. He engaged in subversive teaching while seeming to serve bad leadership. He continued to serve his students' needs. And that's actually what I'm going to be talking about at the conference, and connecting it to what we're the activism thread in computer-assisted language learning. So I'm bringing a bit of research back into the fandom. So it's all connected. So that's how I'm continuing the conversation immediately, but with a different population.
We'll retweet it. We'll spread it far and wide. We'll hashtag.
Well, now I should have kept my under tag there in my lower thirds of Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts.
I love that. I love that. Defense Against the Dark Arts.
I removed it and I switched to early morning in Mexico.
But see, I teach Defense Against the Dark Arts. That's English grammar for me, but I don't know what my students are like. Oh my God, grammar. I'm like, you need grammar. Defense Against the Dark Arts.
That's my edupunk tag. So rebelling against the LMS. It's on my Twitter handle.
Awesome.
Oh, Ken, I'm right with you on that one. They closed my LMS.
Someone, I think Laura Gogia baptized me with that a long time ago. So it's up there on my Twitter bio.
You guys?
Wonderful.
And for me, the conversation would definitely go on with Teresa once I go back to Japan, and with the rest of the people in Japan, I think, once we meet at an upcoming conference or event there. through JOLT or other associations
Yes,
there.
yes. And I mean, we talked about some of the difficulties emotionally, and you know, the being rejected and physically being obstructed from coming, but there's also a big financial burden for Teresa with her visas that she's had to absorb. And the Eurocall community here very generously donated when we asked for some help yesterday after Shannon's plenary. And when I go back to Japan, I'm going to continue that. I mean, I'm going to reach out to the networks that I have there, and you're going to help me do that.
Yeah, sure. We're all together.
Yeah.
Thank you, sure. And I'm gonna hold some workshops, and I'll talk about everything. First of all, I'll blog it, and I talk about everything about Shannon's talk, about Eurocall team's support, about Louis' support, about Meros' support, about everything. So this is a critical event in my life, and I'll share it many times.
We believe you. And one more thing to add is that I'm taking back a Eurocall t-shirt to Teresa, and she's going to wear that t-shirt in her workshops.
Yeah.
We should send nice messages.
Right. We should pass.
That's wonderful.
I just found that quote from that student.
Yes.
Oh, great.
So it says in French, and I'll translate it. Il faut savoir perdre son chemin pour se trouver. Wow. So you have to lose your way to find yourself.
Yes.
Wonderful. Yes. Love it. Thank you, Simon.
Very true.
That should be the theme. This conference.
Is there a theme set for Finland?
No, maybe an informal theme that rose out of this conversation.
Excellent.
Can I say something here?
Yes.
Of course.
Just a quick thing. I was always intrigued. An Icelandic teacher showed me that the etymology of the word grammar from Latin, incantation spells mumbo jumbo. So I appreciate that, Shannon.
That's perfect.
Oh goodness.
You know, send that to me or tweet that. I
can see this in her future slides.
I'm going to share that with my students. They'll love it.
They love it. And it makes sense because your grammar's got to be right. It's important what you say, that spell.
Yeah.
To be right.
You take all of the little ingredients, mix them up the right way. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Magic sometimes. Poison people other times.
Well, Louise.
I'm worried.
Over reveal.
I'm worried about Louise.
On that note.
Thank you very much for connecting.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for connecting. And
Thanks, Ken.
I think I'll wrap up here. I'm going to hit the stop broadcast button. Thank you so much to everybody virtually and physically for connecting via virtually connecting. Oh, there's Teresa.
Teresa?
Yay! We gotta have Teresa in the shop.
You were late.
Tweet master.
She was on her phone the whole time.
Away from the phone.
You're gonna break it.
Have you noticed Shannon's phone? She's
No.
been tweeting while she's doing this as well. So I'm not the only one.
That's what my students do. They play Candy Crush under the desk.
Not at all.
Looking up Harry Potter quotes.
Do you have
Excellent.
Candy Crush in Harry Potter?
Maybe. There's a new one. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll sign off here from Eurocall and Virtual Connecting, and I'll hit the stop broadcast button for those of us who want to stay for a little bit and have the post show. We can do the post show. And thank you so much for Virtual Connecting, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.